Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Select Board meeting is called July 25th, 2024 at 6 p.m. I do have some very sad news tonight. One of our longtime workers for the Highway Department passed away yesterday afternoon, excuse me. Kevin Parody. He worked for the town for 21 years. He was a highway foreman. Everybody loved him, loved to work with him. Pretty sad day. At this time, I'd like to take a minute of silence for him and his memory. Thank you. Item number 2, approve the July 11th and June 13th, 2024 Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? You had your hand up. No? All in favor? Okay, 5-0. Public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Just raise your hand and come up to the podium. Seeing none, anybody out? And did you?
What's on the agenda?
That's not.
What is on the agenda? Do we have an extra agenda for her?
Is there anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we have
Thank
7
you.
attendees on Zoom.
Thank you.
Is there anybody with their hands raised?
No hands raised.
Okay.
Did you?
Item 4, update on wastewater operations with the Department of Environmental Protection.
I think,
Did you,
want to speak?
did you want to speak, ma'am?
No, I got the agenda.
Okay. I'm going to turn that over to Laurie.
Yeah, as you know, we've been struggling over the last few weeks with wastewater operations. So I'm going to have Eric LaBelle give you an update on where we are. And we also have Fred Gallant from the Portland office of Maine DEP, who was kind enough to come as well to answer questions and give any feedback he has.
Hi, so, as
Can
we
you
all,
just make sure the mic's up high enough for you?
is it better? So, around the 3rd or the 4th of July this year, we had a serious upset to the treatment plant, at least the beginnings of a serious upset at the treatment plant. We subsequently saw a significant die-off at our plant, lost a lot of our solids within the plant, which is basically the microorganisms that we have there.
You gotta go.
She can't hear, the lady can't hear you.
Okay.
What, can you hold the mic, are you willing to hold it?
I'll hold it higher.
There, put it
Yeah.
closer to your mouth, 'cause-
Do we have the volume up on the speakers a little?
Is there a way to, is that adequate?
There you
Okay,
go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yep, that's, we had a significant die-off at the treatment plant. We lost a lot of our microorganisms. So all we were seeing is basically the baseline, young life forms, if you will. So we immediately, at that point, we actually, after bringing in the DEP as well, it was highly recommended that we start to seed the plant. So we subsequently seeded the plant over and over again. And also, during that time, we then also tested our sludge that we had been removing from the plant, as well as the flows coming into the plant. I do have those lab results now. It did take a little while to get those results back. It took over a week to get those back to us. We're still talking to people about what those results mean. We did have one compound that was high, which is dangerous for aquatic forms, which is a concern to us. We're in hopes that is stopped at this time.
Do you know how that came about?
We don't know how it enters into us, but it's nothing that we would have at the treatment plant. It would only have to come into our influence, through our influence.
And you have no idea how or where that came in?
Not at this time, not at this time. We brought a lot of experts in over the last couple of weeks. We brought engineers in from Wooded Curran. We are also working with engineers from Underwood. We've brought in a lot of other experienced operators. We brought in operators from the University of New England, operators that manage treatment plants for contract operations through Wooded Curran. They were with us last weekend. In this last week here, I have the superintendent from Biddeford. They'll be here tomorrow. I also have the professor, PhD professor from the Southern Maine Community College who teaches all the operators. He'll also be in tomorrow with us, as well as an engineer from Underwood. So we've set up equipment also. We're just constantly gathering data, if you will, to try to figure out how to get ourselves back on track. We've also this week continued to seed we were seeding from Sanford's treatment facility. We're now seeding from Biddeford, a little bit shorter trucking time for us. We've been doing this about 4 days this week. We've been doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to be doing it tomorrow as well. We have seen some positive improvements in our system right now. We're looking pretty good today. I'll just say that, and we'll take that good day today. I don't want to extrapolate too far down the road on that, but we're much closer to normal today, so which is encouraging. But I just don't want to be overly optimistic. I still want to take a cautious approach here. Take a look at what tomorrow brings. We did bacteria testing today. We also do biological oxygen demand testing today. We will get the biological oxygen demand testing back on Monday. It's a 5-day test, so it requires 5 days. However, the bacteria will have those 2 test results tomorrow, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. At that point, I think I'll certainly circle back with Lori. If our operations continue the way they're operating right now, we may have a different recommendation based on that, but we'll just monitor as we go forward. So.
Any questions for Eric?
I'm limited to 3. Is that what she said? So are we seeing, Eric, so you've explained to us over the days and stuff through the communications that we had very young bacteria and that we were looking for the older
Yes.
ones to help with the solids. Are we seeing that trend?
We're seeing a better flock, but I'm seeding at the same time, so I really would like to get to a point where we're not seeding at the same time.
Can you explain the seeding?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're, so those of you that have done tours of the plant, you've seen the aeration area that we have, and that is basically the activated sludge is what we call it, and that's where the aerobic bacteria lives for us, and that's what does most of the work. And so what we're doing is grabbing activated sludge from other treatment plants and bringing them in right at that location and mixing them in with ours. And that is seeding for us. And so we're seeing much better settlement, not as much as I want to, quite frankly, but well enough to be to basically clear our scent rate, if you will, which is what goes over the weirs and is discharged, is disinfected and then discharged. So it's looking very good today. It was looking good yesterday, looking good today. Like I said, we're going to continue on. I just want to be cautious.
So when all the experts that you've had, that have been very gracious with their time and been here helping us,
Yes.
are they looking at this and saying good trends, feeling good about this? Is there I understand that you're cautious.
Yep.
But are you getting the caution from them, or are there other options for us? Or they stay the course and?
Yeah, most everybody has said be patient, and I guess, truthfully, obviously, it's hard to have patience if you're recreating in the river and so on. However, it does require, as most people say, it does require 2 or 3 life cycles, which is about 20 to 30 days for the microorganisms to kind of take hold, presuming that we don't have toxicity coming in. In a normal circumstance, that should be fine. So, yes, they're saying we're doing exactly what most all the experts have said to do. So we're oxygenating, we're following all the steps. We're data logging right now, our dissolved oxygen. When is it going up? When is it going down? We want it to go down because that means the bacteria is active. And it goes up at night because it's less active at night because there's less food available. It's things like that. We just kind of monitor the process. So we're actually monitoring continuously right now in our tanks. We've got, as I said, we've got data loggers for that. So those individuals that are coming back tomorrow, those 3 individuals who come back tomorrow, we'll be discussing that. Just visually, we know we're doing better. I mean, we're just.
I think to answer Mary Beth's question, I mean, we had people who had run the plant previously come back. We had consultants within the first couple of days from Sanford and Kennebunk. And, you know, we were following their advice in terms of how normally the plant reacts at the beginning of July. And then when we went to the seeding process and the reseeding, we were bringing in material that looked good. We'd look at the material that we were bringing in under the microscope, and it looked like bugs of different variety. But then after we'd reseed, we wouldn't see them necessarily in our own material. And so the question was, why aren't they staying, or why aren't they growing naturally? Of course, you're adding this much to this much, you know, so of course there's going to be disbursement, but it was more challenging until this week. I think we have seen some more improvement.
Yeah, so if there was toxicity in the water, the most susceptible are the most mature life forms. So the bugs that do the most of the work, the most mature microorganisms, are the ones most vulnerable to toxicity. That's part of the problem. So if we're seeing youth, it's probably because we're losing our more mature life forms. So that's part of the concern that we have, and hence why we did the toxicity testing.
But are we able to test to be sure that there isn't still some element of toxicity coming into the system? Are we comfortable with that?
Well, these are the results we have here. So mind you, these were taken on the 12th. It took a while to get our toxicity test back. I will happily share these with you today. I have some for the audience as well if they would like some. Most everything was non-detectable except there was one compound, a phenol, that was in there that is concerning. I just, as I spoke with Fred's chemist is out right now, but I really need to speak to a chemist to tell us, is this a concentration? We know it's beyond the acceptable limits, but is it to a point that would really give us a lot of trouble? That's my question.
Yeah, it seems like you would open up a report and see a glaring red flag that would destroy a whole plant.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Has anyone looked like upstream, going up the system to see, are we testing upstream to see if there's no toxicity up, you know, a mile away, but it's closer? So if it's somehow getting into the system, we can kind of narrow it down to where it might be coming into the system?
We have not. We haven't. So I guess first we identify the compound, who would be utilizing that compound and why. It's a wood preservative of sort, and it's also used in a chemical process. We know, I guess, how it's used into the industry. I don't think anybody's manufacturing things here, but is somebody using a wood preservative like creosote, maybe a compound, or was it just somebody just disposing of it? I mean, those are the questions that we have. Is it a one-time? If it's a one-time and we're back normal, fantastic. But it was very harmful.
But you only have one point on the graph at this point. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So obviously we need to see in time if it goes down or remains the same.
Yeah, we can do another test. At least we know what we're looking for at this point. We wouldn't do the scan. We did a pretty big scan of what is it? Is it a metal? Yeah. Is it arsenic? There's a lot of different compounds that could have done this. But right now, I think we're somewhat narrowing that down.
It's still an assumption that that's it.
Yes, absolutely, and that was in our influent, right? And so.
So that was in the intake. That was in the intake.
I'm sorry, the effluent, but nonetheless, yeah, you know, if it was in our flock or something like that, it could be coming over in our effluent. But it was recommended to us by the lab to take it in the effluent, possibly because of that what is in your system currently today, not necessarily what is coming into the system. Maybe they prefer to see what's going out of your system. Yeah.
So we're looking for like a 20 to 30 day still recovery period, and we want to continue to see good signs through that period?
I'd say we're in that period.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, as I said, yesterday was looking good, however, I'm seeding. So I want to preface some of this. We want to go into tomorrow and see if we're still looking good. Is our settlables getting better? It usually means it's getting more mature for us. Our flock is getting more mature. So these are the things we're looking for. Our pounds are up, which I don't mean to bother you with all the details, but how many organisms we have in our plant is important also. And we're up to roughly where we want to be. Part of the challenges at the beginning is where we may have had the pounds, but it may have been dead, right? So it can throw us off. It can tell us, oh, you're okay. But you're not okay because the organisms that you have aren't vibrating, aren't vibrant and living. And I've also got the 49 forms that shows you what you could actually follow the pounds in the plant as we went. As you get to the 5th, the 6th in that area, all of a sudden you start seeing our pounds go away in our plant, and then all of a sudden we started just coming back up as in the last few days. So we literally gained, I think, 2,000 pounds in the last couple days. So, yeah.
so I'm told we have like a cookie cutter plant, like this is not a special plant,
No.
that this is an average plant.
Yep.
So is there anything that anyone that we've talked to would recommend is, so sometimes in processes you have like a backup process, that doesn't take care of the whole process, but if things start going downhill for some reason, you have a way to mitigate the failure of it until you can get the system back. So sometimes in chemical process, you have that sort of offshoot ramp where something starts going awry, you offshoot, you course correct the main process, is that such a thing in a waste treatment plant, or is that just
It was
not
such a
even-
biological process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real challenge. You can have primary clarifier. We only have secondary clarifiers. There is primary clarification sometimes. That just gives you some insurance because it grabs a lot of our organics and it settles those in. About 60% of your organics in a primary plant would fall first. And then in our circumstance, we go into the plant and then we go to secondary and we go back to the so we don't have that primary clarification. So we don't have that benefit, which makes us a little more vulnerable because whatever's coming through our plant is getting refed to our microorganisms. So that is a little bit of a vulnerability relative to this type of plant. But that's really, typically, that's the only variance, kind of, if you ask me, show me a different plant, it would be a plant with a primary clarification, then aeration, and then secondary.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
yeah.
Any more questions for Eric?
Are we done seating, or,
No, I'll be sitting tomorrow again.
okay,
Yeah, I've scheduled that in for tomorrow. I'm only running one truck right now, which, not that it's inexpensive, but we were running 3 and 4 trucks at one time, so just trying to get as much volume to us as we could.
Yeah, but you're only running one because that's all you need.
It's working for
Because
us right
it's
now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand, but
Yeah,
we're doing everything we need to do, and that's what we're doing, yeah.
yeah.
What's the volume of your 2 aeration basins
107,000 apiece.
apiece?
Yep.
So 200,000 gallons of capacity for mixed liquor.
you got to go to the mic.
Could you come up,
Yeah, absolutely.
pass the mic, please? Thanks.
So, their aeration basins, they have 3 of them, 100 and something thousand apiece. And you expect to have 3,000 milligrams per liter of mixed liquor suspended solids. And so many pounds in each one of those aeration tanks. When they dropped all of their solids out, they lost all of their higher biology. Trying to reestablish that concentration of solids in those basins. Basically, you're bringing everything over from the other plants at 3,000 gallons at a time to replace 200,000 gallons worth of mixed liquor. So that's a little bit of perspective there.
So,
But it's
Okay.
been over 150,000 gallons brought to date, correct? So that's obviously just at 3K a time, so that's.
so we then would suppose that reseeding would continue then?
Well, we build bugs in those tanks, and they reproduce if they're healthy, they're feeding, you provide them with enough oxygen. And as they go into your secondary clarifier, they settle to the bottom. Then you have to do something with that sludge that's on the bottom of your clarifier. So you put those bugs that are happy, healthy, and hungry, you put those back into your activated sludge basin, and they become part of your biomass. The trouble is, if they go into your secondary clarifier, they don't settle out, they leave the plant in your effluent and end up in the river, you can't return them to the process.
And that's why we have to keep reseeding, basically.
Until such time that the natural flock formation starts occurring again. You're at the mercy of the microorganisms. Until they develop those good flock forming formations, you take a singular microorganism and you put it in a glass of water, it's going to remain in suspension. But if you take 1,000 microorganisms and you stick them together in a clump, they suddenly get some density and mass, and that is called a flock, and that's what settles in the secondary clarifier. That's how we physically remove solids from a wastewater treatment plant. We take them out of the aeration basin in clumps, they stick together naturally, and then they settle out in the bottom of the clarifier. And then the operators pull those settled organisms out the bottom of the clarifier, and your clean water goes out the top of the clarifier. Well, if you can't get your microorganisms to settle in your secondary clarifier, if they remain in suspension, and your clarifier looks like coffee 2 creams, it goes to the river. You can't get those solids out of suspension if they're not going to settle in your secondary clarifiers.
And then they just flow out.
Thank you.
Just, if I may answer your question about the industrial, the chemical piece, if, typically in a normal, if I was the largest city with an industrial base, if you will, we have what's called an industrial pre-treatment program. So the individual industries actually have to remove their chemicals before they go into the sewer. There would be a normal program, but a separate program. So they would have their own treatment systems on site. Saco Defense, for example, will have its own industrial pretreatment program. I don't know if it's called Saco Defense anymore, but that's dating myself. But any one of those industries would typically have their own treatment ahead of time before, so we could meet, so it would meet our standards.
So is there a way, I think I'm going off of what David was asking, from everyone that we've talked to and everything that we've, all the input we've gotten from various sources, is there a way to monitor? Or are we just doing, has the suggestion been do what you've been doing, look at the slides, look at the growth?
Yeah. This was clearly very dramatic. It wasn't like, oh, something's changing. We should adapt somehow, give it more oxygen, do something different. In this particular case, it was just
A shock.
It died.
complete.
They died.
So there are things we can do. I mean, I talked to like the Augustus, and they had a similar issue. They had a dry cleaner that actually, they believe it was a dry cleaner. I shouldn't speculate, but they had some solvents come in and 3 times in 1 month and really just shut them down 3 times in 1 month. Not shut them down, but basically killed everything they had 3 times. And what they ended up doing is actually put in pH monitors. We checked for the pH every day. We didn't see a big fluctuation. pH was not our culprit, but it can also can adversely affect your plant. That was theirs. So what they ended up doing is putting in to see if they started seeing pH. At that point, can you do pH adjustment? Can you do something? We don't typically have to. Quite frankly, the water district does a lot of that because they have to do corrosion control on their site. So they actually raise their pH and buffer for us. So our drinking water actually is buffered against. So we usually see a pH of around 7, a little over, a little below, but it's pretty steady. And we check it every day. But that's what they ended up doing because that was one of the indicators for them. But you can see how would I check for this, for a certain compound to come to us? I don't know how I would monitor for that without doing the extensive testing that we did.
Okay, so it is extensive testing, you know, for a chemical compound. There's no other way to,
Yeah, I would
besides
see my
pH, which wouldn't
oxygen.
have done it for us.
Yeah, but my dissolved oxygen, right? If I saw my dissolved oxygen suddenly spike in my water, it means my bugs aren't working. So that would be an indicator for me. Something's wrong. What is going on? Doesn't mean, how quickly can I adapt or to that as a treatment plant? I'm not sure. It depends on the extent of it. Would I begin to seed earlier, do something, just to get myself back on track much more quickly? But typically, treatment plants, it's a little bit of an art, right? You see
Right.
the treatment plant changing, you make your adjustments.
Right.
You want to keep your treatment plant feeling good.
Right.
And so, that wasn't the case in this case. I would say that, I'm not sure what we could have done to, other than starting to seed, and the seeding didn't take the first time, not very well anyways. We had a good day here and there, but it was really just a very bumpy road. I would tell you today, and yesterday, we started to see significant improvement.
So from Fred, from your point of view, or anything that you've given back to Eric, there is no lessons learned from any type of plant from a toxic shock like this, of how to either keep or get back online sooner.
Behind you, if you look at every one of those green dots, that's a manhole in the collection system. And if you look at that green dots and the pink lines, that's your extent of your collection system. Anybody doing anything nefarious or illegal, or, there's a vulnerability to every one of those entry points, whether it's a house service, a business service, or a manhole. Somebody could introduce something to your collection system at any time that could impact the health of your microorganisms. So trying to head that off, stop it, it's just a fact of life. What he can do about it at his plant, if he knows his DO spikes, you're not going to stop what's coming into the plant. You're not going to clean it up. You're not going to be able to head it off at the pass or flick a switch and stop it from happening. You just have to react to it the best you can afterwards. Knowing it's happening, the sooner you react to it, the better. I think the holiday weekend, I think advice from previous, experience at the plant said, yeah, there's a little bit of a hiccup at the plant during the 4th. I think there's some things that happened here that, unfortunately delayed the process a few days, but not very long or not very much. But no, there's no magic way to stop this from happening. There's no magic way from coming back any sooner. You're at the mercy of your microorganisms and their health. If they all disappear from your plant, whether they die or get washed out, bringing them back is a challenge. You have to strike the balance. It's food to mass, enough food to keep enough bugs alive. And to strike that balance, one 3,000-gallon truck at a time is difficult.
What about the dehydrated bugs that we heard about? Are they a real thing? Did they help? Are they something that we should?
I don't believe they could hurt. I don't know if they were necessary or not. When you're trying to introduce new bugs to your plant, more bugs is better. The designer bugs that were purchased were meant for startup. They were meant to boost a plant, reestablish the microorganisms. A lot of treatment plant operators swear by designer bugs to treat specific situations within their plant. We have some designer bugs used by operators to reduce sludge depth in lagoons. We have certain wastewater treatment plants that buy designer bugs to treat during cold weather because they're ski areas and their loading comes in the winter when their bugs are inactive. So they add some at that point in time in their operation. So bringing designer bugs in that are meant to start up a plant and boost your populations, while not necessary, might have helped and shortened the wait time.
Just one other tool we tried to use.
Just another tool in the toolbox.
Good.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions? Mr. Glenn, is there anything that you could add to this? Maybe tell us a little bit what you've done to help us. I know that you've been pretty active.
So for us, this is certainly a compliance issue. Wastewater discharge permit mandates that you maintain certain effluent quality parameters. That didn't occur. Plant upset. I have poured through numerous 49 forms, monthly reports, DMRs. I've looked at historic data. We've looked at trends. I really want to know why this happened. I really want to know how this happened. It's important for me to know that, to know how to react to something like this in the future. In my career with the department, this was the most significant upset that I've ever seen.
Wow.
I've been doing this for almost 20 years. This was significant. It's a head scratcher. I've had my associates looking at the data. We've been looking at all of the records that they have and kept in their process control. Did an inspection at the plant. We've gone down through, was it a salinity issue? Was there a change in the municipal drinking water? Was there operational issues that got us to where we are? And I'm still going to continue to look at data, and we're still going to pursue some theories, and we're going to listen to the experts that come in, and maybe something will show up. Maybe somebody will have an epiphany. Maybe somebody will see something that we haven't digested, or they'll connect some dots that we haven't. But right now, I'm at a loss to understand and explain the most significant upset I've seen in my career.
Wow.
Yep. That's the long and short of it. But we got in early, came in on that Tuesday after this started. Monday was a little deceiving. I didn't comprehend how significant it was. Plant upsets are not uncommon. We do have plant upsets, but not to this degree. So, usually a couple of days they come around, and you usually do see, upsets around major holidays. We looked at the bugs on their microscope. We looked at his microorganisms. They were so dispersed and so young, and you keep hearing me say young and old, and you hear Eric say young and old. Dispersed growth, like there hadn't even been a plant operating a day before. It was just so dispersed. And we can't explain how or when the bugs left the plant. Don't know, but that was on the 9th. Folks from the public have told me that it started to go all funky and weird and smell and color as early as the 1st. And I don't believe what happened on the 1st. I believe this plant upset started days before. So trying to go back and look at that historic data, try to see the window a week or two before the upset is really where we're focused. Trying to understand what happened. And every day that goes by, memories fade, we can't go back and test what was happening at that point in time. So that ship has sailed. The best we could do was sample off from the sludge tank. That sludge was there during the upset, and hoping to see a remnant of what might have happened the week before. That's the trouble. All of our data is from days or weeks, and we may not have seen or caught what happened. This one chemical, it's not very high concentration, 58 micrograms per liter.
56.
56.
0.8.
Yeah, that's not very high.
Of course, it's many days after, too.
Yep.
I mean, had it.
Yep. And then back tracing what that came from and how it got there. That's another mystery to be solved, if we can. Hopefully, whatever happened doesn't repeat.
Yeah, I would just like to say that DEP and Fred in particular, they've been a great resource to the town. They made themselves available whenever we called within a short period of time. Staff, he had staff looking at data, asking questions of every variety to try and just eliminate, possibilities and to try and help us get back on track. He made contact, he gave us advice on where to get the seed from, because he knew what plants were working well. Staff gave a lot of advice to us over this time period. And although it didn't happen in the time frame we'd like, I think they were doing everything they could to support us.
Appreciate it.
Thank
And we
you.
very much
Thank you.
appreciate it, too.
Besides answering all the questions from the public.
We have the same goal. We want that river to be clean.
Yeah,
Amen.
thank you.
Definitely do.
I don't know if the public has questions.
I was gonna find out. Is there anybody in the public that has a question? You'll
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to come up with a
Come up, please
microphone
Come up
or pass the microphone to him, or,
We have an answer as to when this is going to be
Can you
behind
give us your
us.
name, your name
yeah,
My name's Jack Graham,
from,
from?
Kennebunkport, Main Street. And so what are we looking at as far as getting this behind us? We talking about weeks, months?
You
My
haven't
question.
been listening. They're working on it, and we're in the process. They don't know any more than
However-
what they've said.
Eric, do you want to give any, or
Yeah.
I don't know if Fred has any words of wisdom?
So we, as I mentioned before, yesterday was looking good. Today we had a solid day. Everything was functioning properly, and so we're happy with where we're headed right now. So whether we've turned a corner, I remain cautious because 2 days doesn't say. So, however, we will get our bacteria results tomorrow. And we'll read those in the morning. We've got another bacteria result coming out in the afternoon. At that point, I'll be conferring back with Lori, and I'm sure she'll be probably reaching out to you folks as to next steps on the advisory. I think that's just a cautious way to approach this right now. I just don't want to put out any, if we're not getting toxicity coming in, is by all rights, this plant should be getting back on track. I mean, that's the reality. There's not a lot of reasons not to. Everything that we're doing, everything is functioning properly. The equipment is correct. Our dissolved oxygen levels are correct. I mean, we by rights should be getting back on track. And you ask if it's months or weeks.
Best case, worst case.
Yeah. Well, what I've been told, it's been, typically you want 2 to 3 life cycles, which is usually 10 to 12 days per life cycle. So what you're looking at 20 to 30 days typically in a healthy plant. Where are we in that cycle right now? Have we arrived at it? Are we seeing now that we're finally reaching our goal? I don't know that. I want to be cautious about it as we go forward. I would tell you that I think our results tomorrow are going to look good. I'm rather confident about that. So just visually, we can see when the plant is doing well and when things are operating well and when we're getting the proper settlement in our clarifiers. I mean, I'd encourage anybody to come over and take a look at the process just to understand that. We can give you a quick 15, 20-minute tour just so you begin to understand what we're trying to accomplish when we run a treatment plant. So I'm just, pleasantly, I was pleased about today and yesterday right now, and that's where I'll leave it there.
any more questions from the public? Who-
She lives though, right where the discharge pipe is.
Yeah.
It's in her front yard.
Yeah. Yes.
You'll have
We
to
gotta
come
have-
up.
Well, you gotta
you'll have
come up to the mic
Podium,
if you want.
you want to speak, please?
Question?
My name is Stevie Westmoreland. I live on the Kennebunk River in Arundel. And Fred, just hearing you talk, it's Fred, right? It sounded like, and I guess I just didn't quite understand, like there was a nuclear bomb that went off in the system. Is that?
You could put it that way.
Okay, so I was thinking, and I think my thinking is off, but I want to get it from you. I'm just wondering, with all the new, we have so many people who are cleaning all the time. I mean, we have, what, double the amount of people coming and going, and Airbnbs and the Colony Hotel. Could it be that we just have a max of cleaning forces coming in?
Well, we have to, in order for the people in order for the people at home to follow and the people online, we have to talk into the mic, so. No, you are talking, but we can't have people talking to you that they can't hear.
Well, the lady was just saying, I was talking about cleaning, and she was talking about pooping.
You were talking
So-
about chemicals.
So I was
cleaning
talking
chemicals.
about the
She's talking about what
chemicals
comes out the
coming
other
in.
end.
And could it be a more of a systems things, that the system is out of whack because there's so many chemicals coming in from so many different people? And of course, we have the Arundel Golf Course. I mean, we
So
have.
can I just ask,
Yeah.
I'm just testing for understanding. So the question to Fred is it just like a cumulative thing of effect that would cause this toxic shock? Or would it be something that is not something that a town could accumulate by all the by all the residents itself? Rather, it has to be an episode where somebody nefariously does something like Fred sort of alluded to. Is that the question?
Thank you very much, yes.
Human nature doesn't change community to community. Kennebunkport's no different than a Gunquit or Wells or Kittery or any of the other smaller to medium-sized, developing a unique citywide cleaning regime that would be any different than any of the other coastal communities with a small treatment plant. The volume of cleaner that would need to be brought into the system would have to be astronomically significant and happen all at once. Most cleaners diluted, most are dry wipe clean now in your lodging facilities, not bringing a bucket of water down the hallway anymore. I think it was, whatever happened was very significant. It wasn't just, a bunch of people cleaning their homes or their lodging facilities on a weekend. I don't believe that would be the case.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You have a hand up, sir?
Brian Lincoln, 11 Haverhill Avenue. So my question is the bacteria that's in the effluent. Can you comment on what's actually being discharged into the river? You talked about chemical treatment, but does that kill everything? The lady over here has talked about the odor. So currently, what's being discharged into the river? And is anybody doing any testing in the river? So if solids and bad stuff went into the river, is all this bacteria persisting in the mud in the river? And is this an ongoing issue? Because there are people out there daily who are still recreating in the river. And we hear about the bacteria counts on Gooch's and Colony Beach, but maybe I'm not looking in the right place. But I haven't seen bacteria counts in the river, especially at the point of discharge.
So we release some organics into the rivers. Basically, it's effectively any food waste, human waste, what have you, that has been chlorinated, dechlorinated, and released at that point. We're required to do that. We are given a license to discharge a certain amount of organics into the river. It's usually 85% of what is coming in must be removed. A minimum of 85% must be removed prior to be discharged. That is our license, very similar to any other treatment plant. We are required to kill off chlorinate and dechlorinate as well. We're also, once again, our permit has a permit that says, I believe we are 14 as our maximum discharge number that we have for bacteria, how many bacteria we can release. So those are their limits. I'd say that. And then you can look at, and we also, so we can provide you, well, we obviously document all our reporting. So we have what's called a 49 form, and I have them here, and I can also share these for this month. But I can also share you every month that we've had gosh knows, for years, if you'd like. If you'd like to know. Typically, our treatment plant, when it is running well, is running between 98 and 99% removal of organics. It runs very well typically. It's a very efficient plant, and our bacteria releases are typically between 0 and 3. That would be our typical release from the treatment plant. No, it has not been. No. Yes.
Ma'am, you're gonna have to come
Yeah.
and
So-
talk into the mic
Yeah,
to
so-
ask
Why
the
don't you
question.
just repeat what she said?
Yeah, so the question was really, what about right now? And, we test on the organic removal, and I apologize if I have to turn my back to everyone, but on the organic removal piece, we test those once per week. So I will tell you that we tested today because it's a 5-day test that we do. It's called a BOD5. It's biological oxygen demand. It's a measure, and it requires a 5-day test. So on Monday, we will read those. So if you ask me on Monday, where were we on Wednesday, I can give you that number. The bacteria that we do was done today. It's an 18-hour test and a 24-hour test that we do for enterococci, and so we do 2 different bacteria tests, and it was not to get into. Yes.
Tell me about 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's hard to know. We do have some BOD tests. Yes, yeah, yes, and those are organics are there. I mean, are they toxic? I mean, they shouldn't be if they're organic. I mean, as far as what we're worried about is bacteria that may come from human bacteria can potentially, yeah, yes, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Maybe Fred wants to take a stab at answering the question.
49 forms. The bacteria levels should be recorded on there. That's where I would start. The numbers aren't good, but I think that's what they would like to know. Yeah. So a 49 form is a tabular form that we produce and provide to wastewater facilities. And it's a monthly record of all of their operational control data. So bacteria went in July 1st through the 31st. So a 4 for fecal and 3 on entero on the 2nd. An 80 and a 46, a 326, a 152, a 74, a 49, a 56, and a 37. And
Thank you.
for entero, the swimming limit through the main healthy beaches is 110?
104.
104. 104, so,
It's only 2 days that it was above a healthy swimming.
well, the entero, no, never got above 49.
Thank you.
The Entero never got up, the Enterococcus never got
No,
above.
according to
49?
these records here.
That's
The
totally in
fecal
safe-
was
totally
up to
in the safe limit.
152. Well, according to their permit,
You-
I don't have it in front of me. Do you have the permit?
Not with me, but it's 14.
14?
14 and what was it?
Well, it got as high as 152 for
I
fecal.
thought we were 31 was our high.
Maximum daily, on the average, we have 3 points.
That's really dangerous.
No, ma'am, that's not dangerous. I think we need to be careful in how we interpret dangerous. Again, Maine Healthy Beaches says that it has to be 104 before you should be potentially concerned about the bacterial load on a beach. So actually, I'm quite surprised that it was that low. It means that the chlorination was, I imagine, working. Is that what it says to you? Is that even though we had the effluent going out with odor and everything else, the dangerous bacterial load was relatively low? Is that a true statement?
Before the chlorination.
Lower than what I would expect.
Yeah, me too. I was quite surprised at those numbers.
What about before the chlorination?
I'm sorry, but I guess we
Can you
need to
give her
hand
the
the mic
mic?
to the lady.
You don't want to speak?
Well, you can't do both.
Okay, what about before the chlorination started?
The chlorination never stopped.
The
No,
chlorination,
it started
No, the
like a
chlorin,
week after they found out we were in trouble.
no, but
no,
the
the
plant is always
chlorination
being
is part of the
chlorinated.
normal process. It never stopped. We always chlorinate.
Yes. We've
Do
been
you want to
burning.
have Fred just answer that?
Yes. I can't help it. It's gonna-
So the waste activated sludge process, you have your microorganisms that live in the liquid solution in the aeration basins. They then get, that mixed liquor gets transferred to the secondary clarifier. The clear water off the top of the clarifier goes to a structure called a chlorine contact tank. And communities that have a POTW are required to disinfect their effluent from the spring until the fall or year-round, depending on what they have for a permit. Chlorine is added in Kennebunkport's wastewater throughout the year, and it is supposed to be protective of recreational contact with the river and the receiving water throughout the season where you would expect people to be recreating. So from April to October, we look at recreational waters, and those waters that have a discharge to them, the treatment plant is required to disinfect, add a chlorine compound or other disinfection compound before they discharge the treated wastewater to the receiving water. So the disinfection, the chlorine is added, and it's added at a level, no matter what time of year or what is happening at the treatment plant, in a concentration that is adequate enough to provide disinfection. If you're in a little bit of an upset, you add more chlorine. That's standard protocol. So bumping up the chlorine and getting up to a higher concentration was the responsible thing to do, the proper reaction to having an upset. Those numbers are, not acceptable. They don't meet permit limits, but that tells me that disinfection system was working somewhat. Before disinfection, if you're talking about the mixed liquor in the treatment plant, you would expect to see those numbers be in the thousands.
Way thousands, yeah.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
So just to clarify too, just to test understanding. So business as usual, we go through the process. As we talked about, it's a living plant. Sometimes levels go up because you are reacting to whatever is the happy bacteria at the time, whatever is coming into the plant at the time. So it's a process, which every level will change on a daily basis.
It's monitored and there's a feedback loop.
Right.
Correct.
So as we have operated through this, we have not done anything besides reseeding. We have been using our process per the permits.
We increased the chlorination, but we did react to what we saw.
No, but what I mean is we are not, so what I was inferring from the question is that the town went and did something abnormally strange with chlorine to try to do something, but what we were doing was just reacting within the process itself. We have levers within the process. Chlorine was just one of the levers, which is in our normal process.
Yes.
Yes. I
Yes,
just
you
wanna be
add
clear
chlorine
at
to
that.
disinfect your effluent.
Yeah.
If your chlorine demand, it's a term that we use, if the chlorine becomes ineffective at normal concentration, the demand goes up, the chlorine becomes less effective in the disinfection system, you add more chlorine to
Right.
overcome that demand.
Right.
You start out, it's a long circuitous tank. And engineering-wise, you want the water to come in and travel through this long circuitous tank in about a half an hour. And you want residual to be 1.2, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever milligrams per liter at the front end of that tank. You want the chlorine demand to dissipate as the water travels through the chlorine contact tank and then exits the contact tank and goes down the outfall to the river, you want to use up just enough of that chlorine so you still have a little residual at the tail end of the tank. The amount of chlorine that you add to the chlorine contact tank depends on the chlorine demand of the wastewater that's coming out of your treatment plant.
Right.
That changes with the weather, changes with the season, it changes with flows, it changes with the nitrification process. So it's a moving target, and it's their responsibility as operators to chase that target.
Right, right.
We have somebody in the outer office that wants to ask a question.
3 hands raised on Zoom.
He said we have 3.
Lori, you may speak.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Laurie Willett, resident, Kennebunkport resident. I'm wondering if we go online with that station at the pier to allow boats and yachts to come in and discharge their waste, is that going into this same system? With the 85% solids having to be taken out?
Would you like me to answer that?
I'm sorry, wait a minute. It was just-
So
Could you
Lori,
repeat
are you talking about if we were to have a discharge station? Because right now we don't.
Right, yes, because I thought that was in the plan at some point.
Right, at
for
some
the
point it
pier.
was, right. If we did have a discharge station at, let's say, Cape Porpoise Pier, we would want to hook it up to our sewer system, and that discharge would go through our sewer system.
So if it goes through the sewer system, is it treated or is it untreated?
No, if it goes through our sewer system, it's treated like any sewer that we get.
So how is that treated?
It's treated the same
it-
way that all other sewer would
Just
be
as if you
treated.
flushed your toilet.
What, so it's a different system than the system we're talking about when it
No.
goes through the sewer?
No, so if there was a discharge station, which there isn't currently, but if there was,
Right.
we would hook it into our sewer system, and it would just be deposited in the sewer system like all the toilets and showers and drains throughout town that are part of the sewer system. It would just go through the normal system like everything else does.
Thank you.
I have a question. Could I just ask before we get too far away? There seems to be potentially some concern or confusion about the appearance of the effluent that was seen coming into the river, which I think is the gal in the back's concern. And the amount of bacteria that was measured to be in that effluent. And I'd like if Jeff could just address the fact, which I believe is true, is that it may look coffee, it may look bad, it may even have a little bit of an odor, but where it may have a lot of an odor, thank you. But how is that correlated necessarily to the amount of bacteria that is alive and detected in that water?
And you just said a key word, alive.
Exactly.
We don't actually care that it's the bacteria. The bacteria are an indicator species. So you have all of the microorganisms that live in your wastewater treatment plant, viruses, bacteria, small flagellates. You know, you have a lot of different organisms that could cause different ailments, different diseases in humans. The bacteria is just an indicator. Those are resilient microorganisms. And if we, in a wastewater treatment plant, kill those organisms, it's an indication that all the other disease-causing organisms are also killed off. Right. So the goal is to disinfect your wastewater before it goes out to the river. In this case, the microorganisms may not be removed from the waste stream and you're physically seeing them as a brown plume.
The dead microorganisms.
If they've gone through the disinfection system and enough chlorine has been added, there's a chance that those disease-causing organisms in that waste stream are dead, non-viable, and rendered harmless. The bacteria numbers don't meet the effluent quality limits for your permit. It's still a violation, but the disinfection system is partially working in your favor. It's come down from thousands of colonies of expected bacteria to hundreds or double digits.
Yeah.
So
Before
it's not
treatment.
working perfectly, but it is working.
Yeah, that 1,000 was before treatment. It was
Right,
never that
before it's
high. It was
disinfected.
never that high going out. Every
According to the
measurement-
data that's being
According to
provided.
the data we have, the chlorination has worked. So even though there is an odor, even though there is a color, the data show that the level of live bacteria, and therefore that's a flag, an indicator of the live pathogens that might be in there, is below the standard for Maine healthy beaches, which is 104 for swimming.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to tell anybody to go swim in the river right now. We want to be careful of that. But I think we ought to take care not to assume by color and even by odor that these water are dangerous. Is that not, are we not understanding that?
If you look
I'm
at
actually-
the
I'm
data,
sorry. Go ahead, sorry. It was a gal, I'm sorry, it's a woman behind you who doesn't seem to agree with that statement.
You wouldn't smell in a toilet, you wouldn't swim in a toilet, sir.
Ma'am, I would not, because the toilet's not been chlorinated. Had it been and I needed to swim, I would swim, if it had been properly chlorinated. Go ahead. Yeah.
So maybe we should get the other questions.
Yes, maybe
Yeah,
we should.
that'd be nice. Any other questions in the outer audience?
Lori, you raised your hand again. Do you have a follow-up question? Lori?
No, sorry. I just put it back down.
Okay. Moving on, we have Abraham. Abraham, you can speak.
Thank you. Abraham Landau, Kennebunk, Maine. I just have a, I guess, question with a bit of a follow-up. Appreciate all the explanations. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like something catastrophic entered the facility. And I guess I'm just trying to understand, for something of that scale, is it something that is happening naturally out there? Or is it something that was, illegally put into the system? And if that is the case, what law enforcement agencies are being partnered with to figure out what happened and have it remedied correctly?
was that for me or for the municipality?
Well,
I think a little bit of both, right?
I guess what much of you might want to address is what's the probability that this was natural or something that was introduced to the system, in your opinion? This is just an opinion at this point. And what degree of certainty might you have in that opinion?
Right now, I can't tell you with any certainty why this happened. I can't tell you that somebody put something into the collection system.
But do you think it was could it be natural?
This is not something that you see happen at other facilities. This is not something that I have seen in my tenure with the department. This was catastrophic. Something happened.
So more likely than not natural.
That's what I think I'm
Right.
hearing too.
The only natural thing that we have, there's been multiple theories. Could this have been it? Could this have been it? Was it this? Did this happen? Salt intrusion into a collection system is something that can happen. If there's a broken pipe, if there's somebody pumping salt water into a collection system, a salt intrusion into a POTW could upset the living organisms. But we've never seen it to this extent. We've chased down that theory. We've looked for significant spikes in flow, thousands of extra gallons of water coming into the system that were unaccounted for, salinity. Eric's been taking salinity measurements. That theory hasn't panned out. So another theory is that somebody put something into the collection system, and that does happen. We see people who want to get rid of waste They don't want to pay for it. They find a manhole, middle of the night, dead-end street.
Yeah.
Put something in the collection system, whacks the plant, hits the bugs, comes in at a plant at a low flow period of time where it stays in the plant longer. You know, that is a reality that happens. Did it happen here? I can't prove it.
Right.
But it's a theory that we're working on.
Right. So I think the response is that we're looking at that possibility and stay tuned.
And so are law enforcement agencies of any sort, like, is it an active investigation?
It's an active investigation on my behalf as the compliance inspector for the facility. If I can find and prove that there was an illegal dump into the collection system, my department would pursue that. But to make that connection, to prove that somebody did something, that's on us to prove. And that's going to be investigated to the greatest practical extent. Town collected some chemistry data on the sludge, decant, and water that passed through the treatment plant on the 12th of July. I feel that that was weeks after, you know, a week or two after the whatever happened, and whatever happened might have passed through the treatment plant. We may not have the evidence of it. We may not be able to backtrace it to who did it, or where, or when.
So it's too early at this point to bring in law enforcement, but when necessary, they will be.
If and when, right? If and when.
Any more questions out?
Abraham, do you have any other questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Does anybody else have their hands up?
Yes. Next, we have Robin. Robin, you may speak.
Hello. I was wondering,
Could you introduce
there-
yourself, please, name and address?
oh, sorry, Robin Phillips, Kennebunkport. I'm just wondering, are there different, there must be different zones like that come into the plant, like there's probably like they don't all come from the same place. So would it be possible to determine the area of town they came from? That's my first question. And my second question is, where on the river is the discharge? Like where's that location?
Yeah, so by the time it arrives at the treatment plant, it's already gone through our collection system. So it's difficult to be able to go back and say which pump station did it go through. It would be very difficult, or which watershed, if you will, would be difficult to retrace that back, because we only see it when it arrives at the treatment plant. Our individual pump stations aren't going to be bothered by this passing through. Where the discharge is basically at the bottom of Elm Street, right across from Elm Street, where the river is down there.
Wharf Lane.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. Okay, so there's no way to like test that before. And the other thing I was wondering, if you tested for stuff, did you get like a big panel of tests? Like where did you get the testing done? Because I know for the pesticide testing, like it takes like a month to get the results back, and they test for 200. That's out in Montana. So I was just wondering how you guys, where you had the results and how many things you tested for.
Well, we can make, those are available. I share them with everyone here, but certainly we can make those available to you. But we test, one lab was actually in here in Scarborough, and the other lab is in Portsmouth. It's a lab that we go to. The state requires us to do very different types of tests every quarter, if you will, every month, and sometimes every quarter. And so we have a lab that we work with here in Maine.
And Robin, it's a very extensive list. You'll have a chance to look at it, but it's well over 100+ chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very extensive test.
But is this, just to be clear, because I guess I'm confused. So the chemical testing we just did for a part of the investigation, was that a one-off test, or is that a test that we always do?
No, this was a one-off test. Well, priority pollutants was one of the things we are required to do a quarterly basis, but
Right.
we did it with additional components in there as well. We were also looking for heavy metals and other things.
Right.
So,
So this was under the guidance of the DEP of what they wanted us to test and other,
yeah, we
Right.
just, yeah, we wanted to understand better.
Right.
This was, yes, this would not have been in our cycle right now.
right, right.
So you have that available? I just know that, you know, the Montana is the most extensive for pesticides, I think, in America. So I just wondered, these places, you know, you said over 100, but that includes heavy metals, blah, blah, blah. But I just wondered if, you know, if this continues, you might consider expanding what you're testing for?
If this continues, we certainly will need to do further investigation, without question.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Anybody else?
We have Jennifer Como. Jennifer, you may speak.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for what is obviously a very difficult meeting. It's not lost on me to hear the words from our DEP rep that it's the most significant upset I've seen in my career, quote unquote. And so I can really appreciate just how much time and effort and has been put into this particular situation. My question is that, and I know, Mr. Dykstra, that your comment around not to be, these are my words, not yours, not to be overly worried about perhaps the smell or the look, because the data would suggest that it's not so bad. So my question for the DEP rep is, how confident are you that the level and frequency of testing is sufficient to inform us in the community and the, you know, tens of thousands of visitors that the look and the smell is not as important because the data is sufficient to tell us otherwise?
We look at the, hello?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to look at the permit limits. And the permit limits are set to protect the environment and public health. Right now, I can only tell you that those permit limits weren't met. What does that mean in reality? There's a disconnect between a swimming beach and effluent from a wastewater treatment plant. I can't speak to the health of the riverine system. There are other factors at play. It's a dynamic system. There are other inputs: stormwater, pet waste, duck waste, other human activities, boat discharges, illicit. You know, there are other known wastewater inputs, not just from the treatment plant. If the treatment plant's not working as it should in the permit, I have to tell you that's, you know, in violation with the terms, and that is not 100% protective of the environment or public health. That's just the way it is. That's how our permit is worded. Our limits are set to protect public health and the environment, and if they are not met, that's the tell for me and us. The Maine Healthy Beaches program is a different program altogether. They look at ambient water quality criteria on swimming beaches. Their limit is 110 or 104.
Yeah.
The effluent coming out of the treatment plant may meet that, but it doesn't meet my standard set in my permit that I have with the community. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I do want to be clear, if I may have, and I apologize if I sounded flip on that. My concern was just reacting to the thought that this is a super dangerous situation. It is a bad situation. There's no doubt about that. And one should avoid water contact with the river. That is absolutely true. It was just, really just in my shock in hearing that our chlorination process has been successful enough to lower the bacteria content even when it is discharging a number of the organics into the river. So we need to be careful. It's an awful situation. I clearly want to see it repaired. I find some solace in the fact that the chlorination is working, and we are at some level much safer than I feared we were. So I apologize if I sounded flip on that, but I will say that I personally feel very encouraged that we are maintaining the dangerous pathogen bacteria level to the degree that we are.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. And again, I want to underscore how difficult this situation is for everyone. It's a problem of privilege, but my husband and I have our boat docked right at the outflow of that particular situation and have not been able to be on the river, you know, with guests and whatever. It's beside the point, but only to say, I just hope that the level and frequency of testing is going to give us some confidence that despite what would appear to be everything to the contrary, it's not as bad as it seems, which is really what I'm hoping for. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope I agree health-wise. I totally empathize with the color and the smell. I mean, it's an awful situation.
Yeah.
So, Fred.
It is, and thank you. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank
Fred-
you.
Fred,
Did
to
you have
answer
your
that
hand
last,
raised?
can we just finish her question? Fred, I just would like to be
Oh,
clear.
I thought we were finished with
Well, I just wanted Fred to weigh in on the frequency and level of testing. So that was one part.
So this analysis that they're performing for me in compliance with their effluent permit is done at the tail end of the chlorine contact tank. It's a grab sample at the outfall structure for the chlorine contact tank at the treatment plant. That is the disinfected effluent from the treatment plant before it enters the river.
Right, so the DEP is satisfied with what the town is doing in terms of
They have met
testing.
their minimum weekly requirement for bacteriological testing. They've done some additional testing along the way over and above the minimum required.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear to our residents.
And they are clear, just to be again clear, they're testing the same that is exiting into the river. What they test.
Before it enters the river.
It's just before it enters the river. Good, sweetness.
You all set? Okay. You had a question?
Yes, please, thank you.
Please state your name and where you're from, please.
Hi, I'm Anna Kuhn. I'm a reporter with WGME over in Portland. I just have sort of a clarifying question. I think you mentioned that it's hard to tell for sure whether or not the bacteria coming out of the treatment plant is impacting the beaches. I know that you've had some warnings over at the beach. I know there's one at Goose Rocks today. Is there any idea if that's correlated to the treatment plant? Any way to tell that?
Well,
We'd like to.
one thing that might be just a point of observation there, when there is a note, a posting or a notice at the beach, it's when the enterococci, the flag bacteria, exceed 104. What we have just learned from this data is that our effluent is below 104. So I think logic would say that what you're seeing at the beaches is not associated directly with what you're seeing at the effluent. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you. And just a clarifying question, just to make sure I'm reading this right. So it's over 2,000 pounds of effluent that was dumped into the river this month. Is that right? From rough addition here.
I can go through this, but this is
Okay.
cumulative.
And on a normal operational day, that number would be 0?
Oh,
No.
no.
Okay.
No, there are always organics going out to the river.
Is there an average?
Well, we keep track of what is, so those suspended solids. So you're looking at, this is within our treatment plant, the discharge effluent. So yes, the suspended solids going out versus The best measurement.
We could get back to them. I think we ought to study that before we answer and get
Yeah,
back to them.
it's a lot on one sheet of paper. I think the best measure of the amount of organics that are being released is the amount of BOD, biological oxygen demand, is the best measurement to me that says, and Fred, you could correct me on this, but is a very good indication of how many organics are being released, how much is coming into the treatment plant, and how many are being released.
But
So-
this is well above average. Is that fair to say?
You need to look at the other sheet for me. But we have a permit limit, so what the requirement is to remove 85% of the BOD or above. So our target over the month is to remove that much on average. We will know at the end of the month. For example, we did a BOD test today, and we will know on Monday how much was removed in there. And at that point, that is averaged out through the month, and we're giving that limit at that point. Typically, when the plant is operating correctly and well, we're typically in the 98th to 99th percentile. We are required to be above 85. However, we will see whether we are in violation of that at the end of the month.
Any more questions in the audience?
Seeing none.
Yes.
We
Can I
have a
just
hand
say-
raised just now on Zoom.
Well, we just had somebody from the, okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
Person on Zoom, please identify yourself. You can speak. You're labeled as iPhone. You can speak. You have to unmute yourself.
All right.
We'll have to come back to him. What would you like to say, sir? Ask.
Guess I'm supposed to tell you my name?
Please.
Yeah.
So I'm
Where are
Richard
you from?
Schumann, a resident of Kennebunkport, and I just have a couple of quick questions. From the outside, the public notices let us know, the first public notice, I believe, said that there was a problem at the plant, and it was part of the denitrification process, and that it had been an ongoing issue. And that was somewhere in early July. So it seems like there was a denitrification problem in June. And my question is, did that do you feel that that denitrification problem is linked to this die-off? And also, was there any remedial activities associated with trying to fix the denitrification problem? Maybe there was sludge bulking, maybe you guys added some hypochlorite or something like that. So that's part of my question. The other is, I spend a lot of time at Arundel Wharf. My boat is there. And I think a lot of I know there are odors. However, a lot of, I think the problem there is not biochemical oxygen demand, a lot of which is invisible. It's the suspended solids. And the data here, to go to this woman's question, shows that the suspended solids before the upset were about 100 pounds a day. And then kind of in the middle of the upset were about 800 pounds a day. So I think that it's the solids that people are seeing, that I see. It's kind of a milky colored material. So anyway, thank you guys for your efforts. It's not easy. It is. And we really do appreciate everything you do. But if you could comment on the denitrification, that would be great. Thanks.
So initially, when this happened, denitrification is when we see some of our solids begin to float, and that's the decomposition of organic matter, effectively. And when that organic matter, and it was really in July, it was right at the beginning of this process, it wasn't a precursor, it was actually happening to us. And we had a very sudden die-off of all those organics, hence the denitrification of all this, of our organics are beginning to float. And we're not getting them to settle anymore because of nitrogen being there. So it was all our live bacteria that was basically dying. That was the process. So it threw us off a little bit because sometimes in the summertime, and we've had a series of 90-degree days, it drops the dissolved oxygen in our waste. And so we start to see some denitrification. So initially, that's kind of where we went mentally, because that's what we would expect at that time of year. But then we suddenly realized how much more extensive the problem was. And hence we've been trying to course correct that since then.
Do you want to talk about the solids question he had?
Yes, the suspended solids, once again, to your point, as we are not able to get our flock to settle, so you can imagine a suspended solids, our solids are suspended in our flow. And the whole clarification process depends on settlement. So our goal is always to get, and I think Fred talked about having a flock where they bind, they become heavy, and they fall. And for a period of time until we could get that flock back together, we weren't getting proper settling in hence the suspended solids go overboard. So we were sending, chlorinating, dechlorinating, and sending them overboard. And so those were the suspended solids as part of that nitrification and such. Wants to keep everything in suspension. We're trying to push it all down. Nitrogen wants to keep it in floating. So that's what we've been working on, and that's what we've been fighting for. And so once again, now we're not seeing a lot of nitrogen in the system right now, which is a good sign. We're not getting all the settlement that we want still, I'll be honest with you. But we're in a much better place than we were.
It's also fun just to note that when we hear suspended solids, most minds go to fecal matter alone. There's a heck of a lot of garbage disposals and all other kinds of stuff that is put into that suspended solids.
Yep.
So not that that's a whole bunch of solace, but there's some truth in there.
Yep.
Any more questions? No more questions?
Alan, I understand and I appreciate how difficult this has been for folks on the river and in town and to the employees who are trying to deal with this. And that an invitation was made to folks in the room or out on Zoom. If you have not been to the treatment plant, I would suggest you actually go and take Eric up on his offer to show you how this system works. I think a lot of people don't understand how it works, clarification tanks, all that. It is a fascinating system. I think it would behoove everyone who has questions about this to physically go to that plant and see what this process looks like. I think it gives you a better understanding of what's being talked about and the issues that the town is dealing with. So I would suggest make a visit to the plant if you have not been there to see how it actually works.
You're here.
Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, quick question. John Camo, I live in town, and this might be a question for Fred. When you mentioned denitrification, does that mean too much nitrogen? And is it one of the sources of nitrogen fertilizers and things people put on lawns? And a comment further to that, for the last few weeks it's been so dry the grass stopped growing. But in June, we were cutting our grass more than once a week. People, could nitrogen have caused this, Fred? Or?
Nitrification process is occurring everywhere all the time in wastewater treatment plants. It's the process where urine and ammonia is converted to nitrogen gas in the treatment plant. And operators either push through all the way to denitrification, or they retard the process and stay in partial nitrification. So ammonia to nitrate to nitrite to nitrogen gas. It's a conversion of the ammonia that comes in the treatment plant influent. And when we talk about solids in the effluent to the treatment plant, it's a physical issue in your secondary clarifier. When you convert nitrate to nitrogen gas, there are specialized bacteria that live in our system. When they go anoxic, when you get into a low oxygen environment, they convert the nitrate to nitrogen bubbles. They physically form bubbles. You will see them effervesce off the tank when you're going through denitrification. if you go through denitrification in your sludge layer in your secondary clarifier, it actually physically raises the sludge to the top of the clarifier, and your solids can go out the weirs in your effluent. So it's a chemical process that's naturally occurring. The operator either pushes all the way through. You don't want to go through denitrification in your clarifier. You try to control it up front in your aeration basin by providing a anoxic zone. But in many cases, heat of the summer, your DO sag happens in the clarifier and you'll get some rising sludge. I hope that answers your question.
You all set with that? Okay. So I want to thank everybody tonight, especially Fred from the DEP, Eric from the sewer department, and all you people that came out and asked all these questions this evening. It was important, and it was a pretty good learning curve for all of us. I guess we're finished with this.
Yeah, and I would just like to thank Eric and Dave Roberge, who's here tonight, our lead operator, who haven't had a day off in a few weeks.
Yes.
And they have been there working and answering all our questions and reaching out to people and looking for answers and formulating data. It's been I know they have been very stressed. I have been very stressed. I thought one of us was going to end up in the hospital over the last few weeks. So it has been a challenging time. I want people to understand that nobody wanted this to turn around more than us. And we have been working every day to make that happen. I'm sorry that it happened to begin with. We're doing everything we can to correct it, and certainly looking for ways in which we can prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to go on to item number 5. Consider an agreement with GOVOS for short-term rentals.
Yes, and Dave, I don't know if Galen is out there in Zoom land.
Zoom land.
Can you bring him up? Okay, Galen.
I'm here.
In your packet, you have our short-term rental license software contract. And Galen, do you want to give a brief overview?
Absolutely. Good evening, board members. I wanted to just give you a quick overview. You should have my memo in your packet. But essentially, we have had Granicus, which is Host Compliance, our short-term rental licensing software company, over the past 3 years. It's not been a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination. And so in doing our due diligence, we laid out some parameters of what we were looking for in a software system. And then in following the financial policy for the town, our committee conducted interviews with 3 different software providers to see if they met the qualifications we were looking for, which was, again, improving the customer service aspect for our residents who have short-term rental licenses. One of the biggest complaints that we receive is that people don't know the status of where they're at in the licensing program. When they submit an application, there's no status update. And so that was something that was a top priority item that we wanted in a software provider. We also wanted good customer service relationship with the software provider whenever we run into glitches and problems, which did occur over the past 3 years. And so once we conducted that with our qualifiers, we determined that we narrowed it down to 2, and we said, you know what, we need to actually talk to this other provider, which is GovOS. We need to talk to 2 other towns that have gone to this software provider. One of them has been with GovOS since the very beginning. The other one actually had Granicus, they had Host Compliance, and they switched for the same issues that staff has experienced with a lack of customer service, a lack of response from the software provider, and a need to make a switch. And you have, a quick feedback and results that are in the memo. But staff is comfortable with GovOS as a recommended software provider for the town. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So, Tyler Technologies, they don't do as much as GovUs?
That's correct.
Yeah, Tyler doesn't do the mapping and tracking of the
They also
people who are
don't. They
renting.
also don't give a holistic view of the property. So the property history, the interactions between the licensee and the town, that's something that's even missing in Granicus. They do not give you a holistic picture to see what the interactions have been, how many inspections have been done, what's the status of complaints in just an easy to use profile. So I think from a reporting perspective, it also benefits us to go with GovOS to help the select board get the insight and data that they need as well to make decisions moving forward.
So they're gonna give you more information, better than the Granicus?
That's correct. And Tyler Technologies, they're a fairly new company. And when I asked them these questions about this is the things I'm looking for, they said, "Oh, well, we don't have them, but we'd be more than willing to try to create them." And I didn't feel it was in the best interests of the town to be that guinea pig. I think we need a service that is reliable, that's trustworthy, and that will work for our residents.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. What's the?
I have a question, Doug.
Go ahead.
So at 28,000 and change, where does this fit in relation to what we were paying earlier?
I believe your Granicus quote is there as well. I believe it was a,
24.5.
I missed that.
yeah.
Yeah, the Granicus
right
quote
there.
was
$4,000
So
24.5.
4,000, that sounds like a very reasonable price for the better competence. So I'm
And it's within the budget.
willing to make a motion.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? 5-0.
Thanks, Galen.
Thank you,
Thank
Galen.
you
Thank
very
you, Board.
much. Okay, item 6, consider the GEI contract for Cape Porpoise Pier Construction Administration.
Yeah, so as you know, we're moving forward with the Cape Porpoise Pier construction. We've had our first meeting with the contractor, Proc, and our engineers. We do need to sign a construction administration agreement with GEI. They went through the design and bidding process, but we don't have a contract for the construction phase. They've given us a price of $220,000, which was in our budget with both EDA and the state.
Okay.
Any comments, motions?
Nope.
No
We
questions.
need to move it
Motion.
on.
I move that we sign the GEI contract for the Cape Porpoise Pier Construction Administration
For
Second.
$220,000.
for $220,000.
Second.
I have a first and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
I'd just like to thank all the work from Lori and the team to get us here.
That's,
Amen.
It was a long road.
And the governor announced this week that we did get another grant through the Working Waterfront, so we have an extra $289,000 towards the project.
That's wonderful.
that is great.
Tremendous.
Okay, item 7, request by Consolidated School PTA to waive the tent permit for Circus Smirkus.
So moved.
Second.
Have a first and second. All in favor? 5-0.
Good stuff.
Okay, other business.
My martini.
Dave,
I have no other business tonight.
Mary Beth?
No, I just have no other business. I just want to echo the thanks to all the work from the town employees. I know everyone has stated it, but I think we just have to say it again and again. This has been a long July for the town,
It has.
and the amount of updates to the board have been very helpful. So we really appreciate all the work.
An even longer July for Lori, so appreciate all the work that's done there. But
Yeah.
nothing new.
Sheila?
None, thank you.
I have nothing, but I bet you do, under other business.
So we handed out tonight 3 quotes for evaporators for the government wharf. So we had been waiting on one final quote, which came in yesterday afternoon. So the evaporators at Government Wharf for the bait shed need to be replaced. We have been working with staff to try and figure out what was the best plan of attack. And Alan Daggett was helpful to give us his expertise as well, and went in the bait shed himself to take a good look, and he and I came out smelling like fish. So we think that Southern Maine Refrigeration is the lowest bid, and they have done our repairs in the past, so they're qualified, and that would be at $26,000, and that funding would come from the Government Wharf Enterprise Fund.
And it does need to be fixed really
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Need a motion?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, then I would move that we award the repair of the chilling units at the Government Wharf to Southern Maine Refrigeration for a price of $26,000.
Second.
I have a first and second. Any more discussion? No? All in favor? 5-0.
So I'm told that there's a hand up in the audience, in the Zoom.
Okay, go ahead and,
Zoom user iPhone, you have your hand raised. You may speak, but you have to unmute yourself.
Still nothing?
Can sort of hear somebody.
There's somebody out there.
Difficulties?
no? Okay. You had,
unmute them, they
No.
unmute themselves.
That's it.
Okay,
you had,
Okay, we've tried, we've done all
I'm
we can
next.
do.
what's that?
We meet in 2 weeks.
Oh, the one thing I do have else is that the MMA Legislative Policy Committee vote came in, and the two officers for our district are William Ward of Kennebunk and Dwayne Moran of the town of North Berwick. So there's only 2 spots, and those are the only 2 candidates. And I'm wondering if the board would approve voting for that slate of officers.
So moved.
Second.
First and second, all in favor? 5-0. Okay.
That's it.
That's it? Okay, approve the warrants.
So moved.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.